Hey folks, it's Rob Flux here for another Sunday session. Now, this Sunday session, we actually had some technical problems when we went live. So this is a post-recorded, pre-recorded second attempt at doing the exact same thing. So humble apologies for everyone who did actually attend. Now, what we're going to be talking today is about how we can actually leverage imagery in order to improve your marketing message. For many of us, we go out with our marketing trying to sell our finished product, and we've run our perfectly good project and we've picked it well, we run the project really well, and then we get to the point where we're trying to sell the finished product, and all of a sudden things come to a screaming halt and we don't actually understand why. So I've got a industry expert here, so Peter Schravemade from Box Brownie, who's going to be talking to us all about how we can have imagery try to enhance our marketing message. So Peter, welcome aboard, mate.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you, Rob. How's things on this
Again?
fantastic Sunday? Yeah, this is second time over.
Mate, fantastic, and humble apologies for all of the technical challenges we had first time round. I'm sure that we're going to do a perfectly great job this time round.
It's no dramas. You know, it's the irony of speaking to a property technology company and we had tech issues. I mean, you can't buy that kind of publicity, can you?
No, absolutely not. Mate, we're talking about marketing. Why is marketing such an important, role in, people trying to sell their finished product?
I think it's the forgotten message of the property developer. To be quite frank, everything you can have all your ducks in a row. Like if you are in development, construction, whatever it is, quite often you've sourced what you think is the perfect lot. You've got the perfect design for it. You found a builder. Your dream has come true. They've signed up for only $1,000 per square meter, and all of this is going through. You've gone through council. You've streamed it through. Nobody ever talks about their marketing. It's kind of like an afterthought. We throw it to the local real estate agent, Bill Smith, who has been an expert in the industry at marketing established houses, but may not know anything about, selling a 4-pack or a land estate or whatever it is that you're intending on developing. I feel at all points of the process, marketing should actually sit in there, and it should be not an afterthought, but a consideration to assist you in not only moving forward, but getting the best possible price at the end. Speed is a massive thing marketing helps with as well. So, it almost seems like a dirty word in the entire process, but I'd be encouraging you, if you're a developer out there today, to actually start considering it from scratch, all the way through the program and how it can help you.
Yeah, well, I guess we were touching on that the other day when we were chatting, that our marketing is just not selling the finished product. It's actually, we are marketing to council to try and convince council to actually get what we're actually trying to do. We're trying to market to our financiers to get them to actually engage and actually give us, the lending in the first place. And then we've got to finally get the sales, whether they be off the plan or finished product.
Yep.
So there's lots of different stages where we could be considering marketing and probably should be considering marketing, but I guess it's the unforgotten and untold story.
Yeah, absolutely. And to give you to just give you an insight into larger developments, I'm dealing with a hospital precinct at the moment, right? And they haven't got plans for the hospital precinct on the lot, but they are already doing render footage that is hybrid drone in order to kind of get some kind of council and state government approval. And I mean, watching that capacity, that doesn't mean you have to go all out and spend thousands of dollars at the start of the process. But there are definite things that you can do, even at smaller levels, when we're not talking about English Premier League teams or sheep station budgets. We're talking about mums and dads budgets. Selling it to people all the way along is actually really, really, really important, almost as important as getting all of those other checkboxes, because I've seen so many developers who check all of those. They've got all of that, and then they fall over on the marketing. It's crazy. It can be a situation of timing. It can be they just haven't even considered it at the start. So, I 100% agree with that sentiment. Consider it in the process.
And I guess the age-old adage is a picture tells 1,000 words, but The number of times where I see some shoddy pictures or not well thought out, or I've got this great marketing copy, which is what is written on the page, and we've got some terrible footage that sits behind it that doesn't necessarily line up.
Yep, and I think even the proof's in the pudding. You could go to a bunch of developers now and ask them what they have done in the past, and have a look at the marketing that they've got to represent what they have previously done. And I actually don't think that would, pass a bench test of a high level of industry standard. And that's crazy, because if they're 4 or 5 developments in and they can't show you what the number 1, 2, 3, 4 actually represent that in a great light, have a virtual tour of that, or stunning floor plans, professional photography, all of these things, if they're 5 developments in and they can't actually show the previous people, look, here are ones we've done in the past, to demonstrate we're trusted, even that's crazy. So I mean, I don't think you have to go far to understand that the point I'm trying to make is that you need to focus on it at all portions of the race, if you want to call it a race.
Absolutely. So that all of that said, mate, you guys are here to try and solve that problem. So who the hell is Box Brownie? Where did you come from? What's the backstory? What the hell is a Box Brownie? Why are you like? Let's go back in time and how did we start this journey?
Yeah, well, the Box Brownie is a colloquial term given to the Brownie camera, which was released by Kodak Eastman in 1901. And I don't have one of those 1901 brownies, but I do. Here's one we prepared earlier. I feel like I'm on a cooking show. This is a 1902 brownie that somebody gave me in the US. Actually, his name is Steve Rosenberg. Gave me this. It was his mother's camera. So I don't know if she was alive or it was just a hand-me-down, but from 1902, this is what they look like. And they were known in Commonwealth nations as the Box Brownie. It's interesting. Our name in America really doesn't mean anything, because they do know of the Brownie camera. They just don't know it was called a Box Brownie. Obviously well known because it looks like a box. So that one was a very early one. This is like one in the 1945s. About World War II, this one came out, and there was a bit of evolution between these two that you can see if you look at it closely. And then they went to something like this in the 60s. You can see it's got a bit more of that beige styling. Would have looked fantastic with wooden panels and wallpaper at home. And you put the film in the back, you take the photo, and then why you all the way on to 70s, 80s cameras like this. Which is all more compact. It's actually a solid steel design that we're getting into now. And this was a bloke about my age, his father. This was his first camera. So, why I show you those in the sort of game of show and tell. Box Brownies had a slogan that was, "You take the photo and we do the rest." And if you look at our product range, which is like all around me on the panel behind me, you can see that people supply us with the photo and we edit it. So it was really just synonymous with that, where Brad Filipponi, who's the owner and founder, was thinking along those lines at the time he named the company.
And so, good backstory. So thank you, mate. You mentioned, I guess, the Brownie camera being Kodak, and I guess the story that they tell: take the photo, you guys do the rest. That's great, but Kodak had a chance to do the digital world and didn't quite go to plan, did it, mate?
Yeah, you'll notice we didn't call ourselves the new Kodak. Number one, I think their Kodak name is trademarked, but they were off with the digital camera. The story goes, they had it, and then they said this isn't going to go anywhere, and I think it was only 2 decades on they were gone. They didn't exist anymore and bought out by their nearest competitor who embraced technology, which is a big lesson for any kind of technology company. Keep changing, keep innovating.
And phones nowadays have the most spectacular cameras that there are, but I remember going all the way back, and the Nokia 3310 Cyber Silver, having one of those. When they came out, Nokia actually became the biggest camera manufacturer on the planet at that point in time, and those cameras were terrible. So we've come a long way since then.
Yeah, and crazy. Like, side fact, Olympus are no longer manufacturing DSLRs. Sony have scaled theirs back 80%. All of the DSLR manufacturers are actually pulling out of that game because the end is nigh. Legitimately, if you're holding a late model smartphone, and I mean in the last 3-4 years, you've got yourself an amazing bit of kit, and you only have to go to the Apple website to see they're no longer marketing that as a phone. If there's no one actually using it as a phone on the website, it is all the camera takes amazing movies. Like everyone's going to be a cinematographer now that they've got their iPhone 13.
Yeah, very good, mate. So, Box Brownie, but I guess when you guys started, what was opportunity that you saw in the market? Why did you actually in the first place? And over time, that evolved as both technology has evolved, market trends have evolved, etc.
Yeah, well, we started largely focused at real estate agents. All of the edits that we have are synonymous with real estate. I mean, if you want to look at something in what they have in common, they're all around marketing property in some way, shape, or form. But we saw the real estate industry as desperately lacking a lot of the edits that we have, which really put the power in the agent's hands. So immediately it solved a problem for them, and we went after that industry initially here in Australia and New Zealand, but we had greater success in the US and Canada, which are now our number one market, North America in general. But we're in 110 countries, so I shouldn't diminish any of the others. That just a large portion of our clients are in America. And the issue that we tried to solve at the start, I think we successfully solved, is giving agents a pay-per-use system where they could market the property in some way, shape, or form. And that could be if you're a residential real estate agent, commercial, or property manager. All of the solutions are different. Now, it wasn't too long into that process that we came up with the render idea, which is just you can see it over here. I think we started development. Box Brownies 2015 was when the concept happened. 2016 is when we released the tech, and we sort of hit the US in 2017. It was 2017 we wrote the render program, which at the time is the world's first automated way to go on, automated submission process. Normally, when you go to get a render, you'll roll into your architect or your draftsman, and you'll say, "Can you make this photo realistic?" And you'll go along those lines. Like now, you can take that plans, drop it into the website. We ask you a series of questions, and you hit submit at the end, and it's gone. So we really did start focusing on building and construction. I feel like we went down the real estate path because it was low hanging fruit for us. It was easier. The problem was immediately solved, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people may not even know what a render is. So it's a computer-generated image from scratch that it doesn't exist, and it makes it as close to photorealistic as humanly possible. And some of them are just insanely photorealistic.
Yeah, well, if you think the same technology, if you're going to see Harry Potter and Star Wars, and I hate to bust the bubble now, but when Harry Potter waves his wand, that doesn't really happen. That's all computer generated images, and Luke Skywalker's lightsaber is all CGI. That's computer generated, and CGI is another name for render. It's the render is the process that happens at the tail end. So we're using the same kind of artists that you see on the big screen to come up with a render of a property that doesn't exist. So the tech's been around for a while. Obviously, we don't have the budgets of Harry Potter movies and Star Wars movies, but we do very, very well in the render department to make it look photorealistic.
Very good. And you guys offer a massive range of services. So from absolute, real basic stuff. You will send a photographer out. They'll take some professional pics, and one thing was left on the bench, or when the photographer turned up, there's a car sitting out the front or something like that, and you guys are able to magically just etch that out. So let's see if we can have a look at an example of something like that. So here's one brand spanking new finished product that you've got here, and as the professional photographer is turned up to do his magic shot, car drives past in the front and the skip bin sitting all the way out the back.
Actually, I think that car was parked there. I'm not sure, but you'd think if it was driving past the photographer, just wait a second. But I'd like to think it was parked there anyway. But yeah, the idea of item removal is to take those items out. So something like that's a $10 edit, and when you're selling a couple of $1 million worth of apartments, Australian speak, you want that removed because you're not selling a skip, and so on and so forth. I think it's an attention to detail edit. This building looks pretty good, but if you look down the left-hand side, it's scattered with construction that's going on there. So in the interest of presenting it in its best light, we'd do that. It's same deal here. Like these are finished apartments just gone to market. You can't really control the fact that there are cars out the front. So yeah, the item removal product exists to take things out, and that could be any stage of development. That could be a portaloo out the front of construction is quite common for us. The construction fencing that the builders are supposed to put up but rarely do. Well, every now and then they do put it up and we have to take it out. So, all of that, they're the uses for it. You'll think of 1,000 things now you've seen it, and no, to answer your question, we can't clean houses in real life. We could just digitally remove them.
I've seen some of the the image enhancements that you've done where you've had so much clutter on the kitchen bench it's not funny, and being able to take everything out of it, so it's almost like a hoarder's house, and then you go in there and it looks like a magic showroom. So it's amazing what can actually be done. But then you can do the opposite of that, right? So brand spanking new building has just been built. There's, you want to get your stager there. You may not necessarily have, the time or the budget, and then you guys go and put some furniture in there. So here's a before and then an after. So none of that is real.
No, it's not. And I think I was only just on this. Sorry, I've gone the wrong direction. I was only just on this the other day. My friend is selling the house here on the Sunshine Coast down at Coolum Beach. As like everything in this market, it's going for a pretty penny. But $4,000 is what they were quoted to stage just that property of 4, 2, and 2. $4,000, or you could do this. This is the $30 equivalent. So you basically will put as much furniture into a space as you want, and it doesn't really matter whether there's 1 or 2 rooms. It's just a per image cost. But you can see the difference. Like if you're trying to tell a person what a space actually does, the best way to do that is furnished. Now, I always say, Rob, for the record, I always say if you can afford to physically stage it, by all means do that. That is better because people will come through and, if you're selling something, they'll inspect it if you can afford to do that. But a lot of the developers here will be on shoestring budgets, and virtual staging is really, really effective in actually getting the people to the property. Doesn't seem to have any slapback as far as, there's no furniture there. And if you're worried about things like that, you can put things like art easels up in the room of the picture. But, in 20 odd years selling property, I never had an issue, dealing with the objection of where's the furniture, because I actually feel like, when there's no furniture, there is the best time to see if there is a hole in the floor or the wall or hidden by a picture.
I like to think of our marketing as really like a resume. You want it to be enticing enough to get somebody to the property, but not, informational enough that it's actually going to make them make their decision. So that they need to turn up and actually make up their decision in situation. So now some other ones that you know of, just the bread and butter is the Twilight Shots, the before and afters, right? So this is probably the bread and butter that everybody sees, and it used to be the realm of the professional photographer. You'd go out and they would take the pic, and all of a sudden it would just magically turn up, and you don't realize that people can actually do that on their iPhone now, and
exactly,
or Samsung or whatever your technology of choice is.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I didn't mean to be too Apple biased at this end. I won't go down that line. But yeah, the Twilight conversion is I think our most powerful edit. We have a bunch of numbers on this from realestate.com.au, from the National Association of Realtors, the Guild of Surveyors in the UK. They all tell us that this one gets more clicks, the secondary Twilight shot, as opposed to this. And here is a perfect example. For all intents and purposes, this could actually be shot at twilight, um, but there's not the magic twilight that people want to see. So for a $5 edit, we go and do this, and it makes it more dramatic. So I would be encouraging you, if you're watching this and you're looking at ways to present property, you only have to do this with one image, and this would be your first image to encourage somebody to click on it. If it's going to get more clicks than this image, then, which is actually a legitimately good image in its own right, you may choose to include that as part of the marketing. This one would be my first pick. People will be clicking on that first.
Yeah. It's what we call the hero shot. So
yep, you're correct. Yeah, that's exactly it. That is your hero shot. That's the one. Yeah. But that flows through to a bunch of other things, like even just I did a popular building conference tour here on the circuit in Australia 2 years back, when we were all allowed to meet in person and we could have lots of people in rooms. And I know that's changing now, but I'm looking at people who have billion-dollar budgets. These are actual vendors that have turned up, and they're demonstrating, let's say a roof or the side of a house with $1 billion budget, and they haven't bothered to do this simple $2 edit here. which is crazy, because the second shot is so much better than the first. This is, actually shooting in the rain or shooting into direct sunlight. These are things that happen. You'll notice, there's no there's no rubbish bins out the front of the secondary shot. We've replaced the sky anyway. So all of these are just really, really simple hacks or tips or tricks, if you want, to presenting the property in its best light. And you can do these with the smartphone. I always recommend, at the end of a development, if you're approaching, if construction has finished, I always recommend getting a professional photographer through. But certainly, quite often the last person to take a photo of the property, and this is what I mean, if you ask a developer of their previous 5 developments, the photos that they're going to be showing you is the landscaping gardener, because he's the last one to be leaving the property. And you'll say as an afterthought, "Oh, please get me a photo of that." You've sold them all, maybe, hopefully, you've sold them all by that stage, and it's settlement, and you haven't had the time to get to the property. So you say to the landscaping gardener, "Please take a photo," and he's probably got a Nokia 3310. So we're gonna be working with that, because they're hard and rugged. I mean, I haven't seen a tradie with a not smashed phone in a long time. So you're gonna need us at some point, I figure.
Well, one of the things that we were talking about before, and I forgot to stick your details up before, mate. So there they are. We're talking about marketing through the life of the project. So when we go to actually lodge with council, and I've got a perfect example at the moment. I'm about to do a pre-lodgement meeting with council. If we go in with super detailed survey plans and the like, very often we're actually giving too much detail away. What we actually want to do is simplify the message and let them actually grab the concept, as opposed to let them concentrate on the detail where they start picking on things. Give us some examples of, maybe some, land subdivisions or things like that you go through with this sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I was huge on this. Whenever I would approach council, I'd be presenting it with this secondary picture rather than the first. I guess, as a young marketer of developments, I was always of the assumption that the town planner was a genius in all things development. It became quite clear to me that they weren't always as technical as what we thought, or they were overly technical. So and there didn't seem to be any medium ground. So what I would do, even just in land estates or whatever it was, if it's a development like this, I wouldn't be presenting it as this. I'd be actually marketing as I was marketing it to somebody else, because the amount of times that they would look at the impact of what this development is going to be for the surrounding lots And this actually presents it. If I give them this, it doesn't tell them that it is a treed and leafy estate. But this here is, there's ample trees in there to demonstrate that. Aerial imagery is the same. It makes so much more sense to walk into council with this than this. And coming back to the original point that we were discussing at the start, I don't think developers are considering the fact that this is possible. It's actually one of the first things that I would do regarding, regardless of whether it's a land subdivision or a unit site or whatever it is, I would get aerial photography even before the property settled. I'd be sending it up because this is the type of thing that I want to be looking at. I don't want to actually show them the construction already happening on the lot. I'll guide that, or we'll present it in the best possible light. So these kind of things are what we would do, not just in property marketing, but in actually going to council to beautify the experience and to really let them understand what's going on.
Yeah. Now, for anyone watching this online, obviously you're doing some demos with, I guess, over the interwebs. So what is coming up on screen may not necessarily be, I guess, the level of detail that they're seeing in real life when we actually get it there because of, I guess, the speed of the network. So I'm just seeing a couple of moments lag sometimes with an image kind of hitting the high res.
Sure.
But otherwise, mate, very much get the concept. I guess, how and where else would we be using this through the process? So there's, I guess, through the getting the approval stages.
Yep.
Then there's selling off the plan stages.
Selling off the plan's a big one, and that brings you into things like floor plans and renders. That's really where they're at. So a lot of the time we see things like that, and it's really simple. These aren't expensive edits. This is like a $30 edit. This one here is like $35, and this one here is $40. But I'm sure you'll agree as I go, and I realize it might be a bit laggy, but as I go through, I'll just go back to this is a black and white floor plan. This is a 2D textured floor plan. You can see a bit of the texture going on in the floor plans. This is a 3D floor plan. All of these have their specific purposes. And if you look at the major developers, they're actually presenting black and white floor plans because they're simplistic, and the Australian public just gets it. They can look at a black and white floor plan like no other society and go, yeah, I understand that. The 3D adds more dimension. It tells them how they're to be lived in prior to even having a photo to be shot. So, I'd commence with floor plans, but then I'd go through to things like renders. And renders are vitally important. We spoke about them earlier for selling CGIs. I even have a case study that we've done on renders. It's American, but what I see is too many people putting up 2D elevations as opposed to or construction photos during construction photos. And by the way, the during construction photos actually work better than the 2D elevations. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying bear in mind that they're all trumped by CGIs or renders of properties that don't exist. So, if you're trying to sell the look and feel of the house, these things are amazing in that you can actually position them on the block if you wish. You can demonstrate the same plans with different roof lines. You can show luxury items as they would be when they're done. You can really do anything with a render. There's no end to that capacity. They're a computer generated image. So, really all you're looking for is at speed to demonstrate to a purchaser really, really quickly what the finished product will look like. And static renders have been around for ages. They've been around since I got into real estate. They were a hell of a lot more expensive than what we're putting them out for. I think the first render I ever did was $16,000. And you might even trump me on that, Rob. I don't know.
$2,500.
$2,500. That was the first one you did?
Yeah. And it was such to the point where they actually gave me a framed picture of it at the end to
justify the spend,
to justify the expense.
They were 16 and a half when I first did one, and that was of a large development. So I remember that massive chunk of change.
Yeah. So from a rendering perspective, like we're taking, I guess, the CAD drawings typically off of an architect. Architects don't necessarily like giving up their IP and giving away their CAD drawings. So it's not like we have to have that, but it's ideal as a starting point. What can we do if the architect's not giving us the drawings that we need?
Oh, well, you can insist. Like, I do these days. I take a fairly hardline approach to architects who are holding back. And I understand why they're holding back. Like, they'll be holding back because they of a copyright issue, but basically you're paying the money for them to draw that, so they should be providing you with a CAD file at the end. Sometimes they're just a little bit funny about it. And in fact, we're asked to sign non-disclosure agreements to agree that we're not going to pass that on, and we're fine with that. That's all part of the process. But if they very insistent or you don't have it, floor plans and elevations are great. We did a render the other day from a photograph off Google. It's not this one. This is actually our internal 360 renders, Rob. But we did a photo of just someone. This is a block of land, and we're going to put a house on it. So we don't actually need all of that detail. It just increases the speed.
So like you said, this is a 3D render walkthrough. So this is kind of taking it next level. And again, this is not doing it justice, trying to do it over this kind of medium, but this is, I guess, 100% immersive, interactive space where they can jump to any part of the floor plan and see, I guess, how it would be, including furniture, the whole lot, with all the finishes, the fixtures, the whole kit and caboodle. Now, admittedly, this is an American house and quite gaudy with regards to design styles, but the Americans love that stuff. So
they do.
But pretty much anything is possible. Now, if in trying to do something like this, the thing that people want to really know is, how do they tell you things like, I want that kind of curtain, or I want those kind of lights, or, all the different elements that are going into this, those floorboards, how do they look like? So they're all in the industry what are called textures. But how does somebody actually determine what textures for you guys to choose?
Yeah, a lot of developers we work with, you'll watch this one spin around in just a second. You'll see us change between the textures that are there in the development, and a lot of the developers we work with will give us a style guide, but some of them, will hand over the building contract where the builder has chosen all of those things for them, and we can match them to spec. So if you give us examples of a pine flooring like this one, as opposed to the simply grey or simply white. I don't know why they would call them that, but again, this is another American home. But these textures you can choose, and they could be as simple as going to Google and saying, we're going to duplicate this style. Ideally, because when you get to this stage, you are generally marketing for purchases. This is not something that you'd spend the expense on unless it's a larger project for council. Certainly not the internals anyway. You might do the externals, but or the exterior. But for this, it could be as simple as going to Dr. Google and asking them for modern finishes and handing them over. We don't expect you to answer all of those questions, but the more detailed you are, especially in relation to what you see at the end of the project, the better it is for a purchaser's or tenant's perspective. You can use that for marketing the whole way along. So, you can give us as much or as little detail as you want.
Very good, mate. Now, 3D walkthrough renders are, I guess, some pretty schmick stuff, but you guys have started doing way better than that. So a lot of us go get drone shots and that sort of thing, try to get our site overviews and that sort of thing. But you are now starting to have those rendered images inside a live flying drone shot kind of example. That, like, what are you guys calling them? Hybrid renders, I think, from memory.
Yeah, that is the term we've given to them, but effectively it's why we call them hybrid is you're using computer generated, but it's also with a combination of drone photography. So and again, this won't do it justice, but this is in 4K, shot in 4K, but the development that you're seeing just off to the left of the middle it doesn't exist. So these are quite often small snapshots. In these instances, only 10 seconds, but These kind of things are used to sell a sizzle, as I would put it. Or you can see that boat coming around the point. If I just go back to it, you can see cars moving in the lot. You really, really get some kind of idea as to look at the look and feel of that development. So, I find them to be the best way to demonstrate to not only to purchasers, but these are being used quite heavily in demonstrating the impacts of development for councils. Remember way back at the start of this conversation, I said the first thing that I would do with regards to a lot, even before it had been secured, I'd be sending a drone up on a picturesque day and taking aerial photos of that property in the best light and aerial videos, and I would have that on file because at some stage during the development you're going to use it, and the hybrid renders are a great way to go about that. We actually don't offer that as a standalone product on our website at the moment. So if you go looking for hybrid renders on the website, you're not going to see them. And I haven't discussed any pricing on that because we're still trying to solidify that. But if you get in contact
but
with
if you
me,
want one, just click on the button below and
that's it. Yeah. So I mean, it's there's a bit of instruction we'd have to give you, even to get the drone photographer to shoot it. They've got to shoot it at a certain frame per second, and they've got to shoot it at a certain speed. So this is an emerging tech, is the way I would put it, Rob. We discussed Kodak at the start. That's not us. We are definitely trying to innovate all the way along, trying to change our product list, trying to stay on the cutting edge, so that anyone from a developer through to anyone representing property has the best tools available.
So if we were to give, I guess, some tips and tricks to, I guess, our entry-level developers coming in and trying to do things on a shoestring budget, what are some of the things that we would try to give them as guidance with regards to how to take the images, I guess, how and when to put them through the process, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, with regard to the imagery, take photos, take the best possible photos you can. Don't sit in a car. Take one with the outside of the rear vision mirror or some element of the car. Just remember that we can do magic with them, but they need to be of a certain standard to start off with. So get out of your car, take a photo of the entire structure or location. And why I say that is, I don't want a photo of the front door. That's not going to help me. And don't get too artistic. Just when you're taking these photos, try and capture the room in all light. But if you really want to upskill yourself in that area, our blog is sensational. There are nearly 100 documents on different forms of advertising, how to draw floor plans, how to take photos. All of those, nearly all of our services are shoestring budgets. The image enhancement just above me, $2. This one's $5. The floor plans are $30. The item removals $10. And so all of these are just they're really, really cost-effective ways of presenting your development in the best light. And so I'd encourage you to have a look at all of those. Definitely understand the process, whether you choose to do it yourself, which is, I guess, what we're talking about, or rely on a professional. And the true professional property marketers are excellent. In no way is our message saying you don't need them, do it yourself. If you have the budget to get someone who has done this before, then by all means take it off your plate and give it to those people. There's probably a good chance they're using us anyway. But the reality is, these are there, I think, to fill the gaps. Like, there are going to be times that you want to put your development on Facebook or any of the social media channels, or even just send out an email campaign. Present the property in its best light is my challenge, and consider marketing the whole way through.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what things we've not covered, mate. We've pretty much taken a whirlwind tour around, I guess, the different elements of marketing. The key message I'm going to say is make sure that whatever you're trying to say in your words, that your image is actually backing that up. That's probably the most important thing. The number of times where we've got some really schmick marketing words, the copy, and the imagery just doesn't really match that.
Yeah. So, I mean, keeping a balanced campaign's hugely important. Don't forget there are tools at all ways through. So we spoke about pre-construction. During construction, you can take photos. We have a virtual renovation product, which is pretty cool, where you can complete the development. There are, I don't know how many times I've heard developers. Even in this network, I heard one speak the other day on the session, and he was saying that he had experienced delays in his construction, in the approval process, in the rental process. Don't let delays or also get in the way of you using marketing to move the idea or the marketing or the sales or the rentals forward. You can do that outside of it. So, and we're not going to cover all of the scenarios that you're going to get. I think one of your terms that I heard the other day, Rob, is there is likely to be something going wrong with your development if you're going to expect. I can 100% agree with that. If you think that you're going to get into property development and all of the wind is going to blow your sales in the direction that you want to go at the rate you want to go, you're probably cracking jokes, because I don't think that'll happen. Something will go wrong in the process, and I really feel that marketing comes to the rescue when builders have down tools for whatever reason. They can't get on site because of COVID. There are rain delays. It's Christmas and the builder wants time off, or we can't get the product. We don't have any roof trusses. The cost of lumber's gone up. We can't source it. Like, all of these things are actually happening right now at multiple development sites around the country. And when that occurs, turn your attention, things outside of your control. Turn your attention to marketing and have a look at the things that you can do to still progress your idea or your development forward.
It's amazing what you can Photoshop either in or out of the image to make it look like it's further along than it actually is.
That's right.
Now,
Rob,
we
can turn you into Beyonce if you really wish.
We please don't. We can't lie, but we can what we call embellish. So embellish is really just shining the best light on things. That's really what we're trying to do.
That's a really good point, Rob. In none of this would I recommend that you deceive the purchaser or the tenant, whatever your outcome is, or even an investor. I wouldn't be doing that. The intention is to present the property in its best light. So instead of putting a grey sky, which happens, here in the sunny state of Queensland, one day out of every 600, no, more than that. But a grey sky day shouldn't get in the way of you presenting it on a blue sky day, because purchasers, when they look at, the one that's just above me up here, they obviously that's more palatable than something that's grey. So don't set out to deceive. Don't remove power lines. Don't take out the sewage plant that's behind the property, although I'd argue that you probably shouldn't have acquired it if there is a sewage plant behind it. Anyway, don't do anything.
We happen to be talking about a current affairs story, I suspect. Yeah, so yes, I have seen some quite remarkable things where giant water tanks have just suddenly disappeared in the background and all sorts of things like that. Please don't do that, folks.
The big power lines, they are a favourite. Can you please take those out? And well, I wouldn't, because people are going to see them when they get to the property. Don't do it. Yes, we can. We will if you ask us to, but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Mate, why, other than the fact that clearly the work that you're doing is fabulous, why would they use Box Brownie? So tell us a little bit about, I think you touched on 110 countries, and you guys are huge.
Yeah, we're doing well. We started out as a humble beginning. There were three of us in a little factory in Mooloolaba, or a little shed, and we've come a long way to where we are now. But having said that, we are, speaking personally, a high scale, low profit margin business. So when you submit an image for $2, I'm going to suggest to you that there's not a lot of profit margin in that. We operate off the fact that millions of people, on a weekly basis, will submit images to us, and we've kept the profit margins down to do that. So, people don't have to use us. They just need to know that the service is there, that, whenever they want it. It's not a subscription basis. But at any point in your marketing, you should consider the tools that are here. And we're a bit agnostic. You can, if you're going to go and use a professional photographer, we would recommend that. All we set this up to do is to assist anybody when they come to property marketing to do the best, to market in the property in the best light at the lowest budget and really fast. Time constraints are important too, and a lot of we haven't actually spoken about time constraints today, but most of our products will come back to you in a matter of hours. Obviously not on the renders and the more hectic edits. If you expect a hybrid render video back in a couple of hours, it's probably something that we can't deliver. But within reason, all of our product offerings are actually really a time-saving device as well, if you go straight to it. But I guess why people should use us. You can make your own judgment up as to the company that we are. But we're proudly an Australian, proudly a Queensland property technology startup that's smashing it internationally at the moment. And we're quite proud of the fact that it's all been developed here. Actually, even on that, while we're talking about it, Rob, the fascinating thing that not a lot of your viewers will know is that Australia actually leads the world in property marketing. Australia, New Zealand, and Scandinavia, the levels of property marketing are far superior to a lot of other areas around the world. And globally, that took us by surprise. When we went to America, we thought the lights would be bigger and brighter and everything would be better. And it actually stunned us that it wasn't the case. And, the status quo over there, the industry average is that if you're marketing, a house that's $1 million or more, you're probably going to be taking that on your smartphone. Yet you go to any realestate.com.au or any portal, domain.com.au, and have a look at the standards and the levels of property marketing here. We're actually punching far above our weight. So just try and lift yourself above the cesspool of developers. I think the average developer is probably not at the standard that they could be. When you look at real estate marketing versus property developer, I do feel that a lot of the developers in Australia will try and cut corners on marketing. So that would be another encouragement is to lift yourself up. But we'd love you to use us if you choose to see fit and you find the reason to do it.
And you mentioned getting your turnarounds in a couple of hours. That's because you've got, as you said, you're in 110 countries, but you've got 4,500 people, I guess, doing work for you guys. So, you're not small.
No, and we don't have a sweatshop with those people in it. Our editors actually paid above industry rates in the countries that they're in, and they're in all countries around the world. We have editors here in Australia, we have editors in the US and in the UK. The only difference that we find between the first versus third world, if you want to use that term, or the average income, is that the hardware and the automation that they have in first world countries is so much better than, let's say using a Windows XP computer to try and do a photo edit is a lot slower. The processing power is not there. But a lot of our products, like virtual renovation, for example, is not a Photoshop product. It's a fairly hectic render where we redesign the room, and then the render process would take about 4 to 8 hours on most computers. So we've found a way to deliver that quite economically at a low budget and fast for all of our consumers. So yeah, we have a diverse editing field in all geographical areas of the world, and that's probably important as well. Rob, when you lodge a job here, you might be lodging it at 8 p.m. at night. I'm going to tell you, it won't be me working on it. I'll probably be sleeping.
I was hoping not.
Oh, come on, you haven't seen my editing skills. I might be all right. But yeah, no, it won't be me editing on it. So we even have the time zones divided up. So we couldn't have all of our editors in Australia because they've got to sleep at some point, and to feasibly, when they're going to sleep, the Americans are submitting jobs, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, one of the advantages is you, I guess, submit the job when you go to bed, and you get up in the morning and it's there. So
that's the intention. Yeah, that is the intention.
Yeah. Well, mate, it's been a pleasure once again. And I guess for those of you who did, I guess, go to version 1 of this that didn't quite go to plan. So thank you very much for your patience. Peter, for anyone wanting to use the services of Box Brownie, it's actually boxbrownie.com. Being a global organization, you've chosen the .com moniker, mate. So thank you very much for your time, mate. It's been a pleasure. We would normally go to questions at this point, but as it's pre-recorded / post-recorded,
Well,
I'm just going to...
if someone has questions, they can flick them through to me if you want. My email address is really easy. If you don't like anything I've said, or you want to hurl abuse at me, or thank me for whatever it is,
it's Rob at, yeah.
yeah. If it's abuse, send it to Rob. No, my email address is really easy. It's peter@boxbrownie.com. I'm assuming I don't have to spell that for you, but it's pretty simple. If you've got questions or you don't understand something I've said or want to seek clarification, just shoot me an email and I'm more than happy to answer it.
Very good, mate.
Hey, thanks for having me too, Rob. I really appreciate it. For the second time in 2 days. Thank you.
No drama. Thank you very much. And guys, we'll see you all on our next Sunday session. Bye for now.